Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. Before we get into it, let's get into this intro. Welcome back to Gunners Collective TV. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directing the direction of the dope content that the gun is kicking. And I highly appreciate all the support. Thank you. I'm very humbled by it. So I get asked a lot of questions. And one of the questions I get asked probably the most is, what is the most violent or craziest or vicious California prison? Okay, there's a lot of them. You know, if you think violent California prisons, you think Old Folsom. You think Pelican Bay, obviously. You know, Pelican Bay was notorious for decades because the most controversial, the most vicious and violent offenders were sent to Pelican Bay. When you think Pelican Bay, you think the whole prison, but it wasn't necessarily the yards. It was more so the shoe that it was known for. There's been violent prisons throughout California like Tehachapi, Centinela, Ironwood, and of course, Corcoran. But two of the most violent prisons, or three, that are really making noise, and there's two that are really making noise right now, are High Desert. You know, I remember guys used to use every tactic that they could to not go to High Desert. Not because High Desert was so far away from everybody and everything, but because nobody wanted to go to High Drama because the vicious nature of the level 4 yard. You know, there was something about that prison that when you got there, guys turned more violent. They lost hope. You know, it was a prison that was designed to break people. It was designed to cause chaos. You know, there was a prison, as soon as that prison opened up, within months, there was a killing. The first person to be killed on that yard was a Norteño by Southsiders. And that's a fact, you know, so that set the precedent, that laid the demo down for future endeavors there at that prison. So nobody wanted to go to High Desert. I had several cellies that had been to High Desert, and they told me stories about being on the yard doing removals, being involved in melees with other races, with other groups, and how it was all knife play 100%. And that's how it is on the level 4 180 yards, period, in the California prison system. It's a no hands policy from all groups. It's all about knife play. It's all about going out there and trying to catch a body. Now, the prisons that have been making the most noise have not been High Desert lately. High Desert has been doing its thing consistently. But the prisons making the most noise right now, what I consider probably the most violent prisons, there's two of them. One is New Folsom. New Folsom has always been notorious. It has always housed some of the most violent offenders as far as Norteños and Southsiders go. Blacks as well, whites, of course, brother, right? But North and South has always had, there's always been tension there in the past. You know, there was a time when the Northern structure had their yards. The Southsiders have always maintained whatever yard they go to, even if it's a single solitary soldado, that is their yard. So there was always tension in the past. But it seems like New Folsom nowadays has turned a new leaf as far as violence. You would think with this end of hostilities, there would be a lot of people on their P's and Q's, dotting their I's and crossing their T's and not trying to get caught up. But that's not what seems to be happening. What seems to be happening is even more violence. And I think a lot of this falls on the shoulders of the administration, the people they're placing in these particular prisons, the level of violence that these prisons attract. You know, when you go to somewhere like New Folsom, because of their notorious nature, and don't get it twisted, a lot of people mix up Old Folsom with New Folsom. They seen the movie American Me. That was Old Folsom, which is a lower level yard now. In the past, being the second oldest prison in the state of California, there's a lot of history there. It was a stronghold for one prison organization, and several other prison organizations did function there. But at the same time, it is a lower level prison. Now, High Desert is New Folsom is a level 4 prison. And New Folsom lately has been going off. And I thought with the end of hostilities, that would calm everything down. And it did for about 6-7 years. We weren't hearing about too many, we're hearing about isolated incidents, prison killings, and and certain things that were happening, removals and people getting ran off the yard, but there wasn't no riots or melees or anything like that. Well, lately there's been two, prison riots at New Folsom. There's been several murders. In fact, there's an incident where two guys, and I've done videos on them. One guy, Monster Cody, Monster Cody, not the Monster Cody you guys are thinking about, right? But Cody Taylor, who is from a dropout prison gang, has already caught his second body on the same yard in New Folsom. He was involved in that stabbing in the day room where that youngster was chained to a desk, and him and his co-defendant ran up into a cell. And it's all captured on film, grabbed knives, came back and got to work, got busy. An unfortunate event, a cowardice act, if you ask me. But I guess there's nothing fair. There's no fair rules in prison. If you pick up a knife and you're willing to use it, you use it. And if someone else is chained up, I guess, hey, that's even better. That's a bonus, right? But then the guy doubles back, catches a life term, doubles back, and does recently another prison murder, which, of course, he's going to be going on trial for pretty soon. So it's back-to-back incidents with just that one guy. And there's a white inmate that's running around that has already caught 3 murders in New Folsom, back-to-back. 2 of the murders within weeks of each other. Okay, what's going on now is a different prison design. There's a new design going on where they're not placing people in the hole for very long. They're not giving guys indeterminate shoe terms or placing them in the shoe. If you catch a murder on the yard, if you catch an assault on the yard, you get a slap on the wrist, go to the oil for a day or two, and go right back out into that same yard and to perform again. And people are taking advantage of that situation. Now, in the end, it's not going to work out well for the convict, because this is designed to make them feel like they have some type of freedoms or liberties to do these things and get away with these things, when at the end of the day, and you got to understand, a lot of these guys are lifers anyway, so the time doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter. And when you're part of a gang or part of a group, it shouldn't matter anyways. You got to get busy when you got to get busy, right? But these guys are being placed back on the yard with the design of committing these crimes and keep as vicious and violent as they get. This is going to give the system an opportunity to prove to the judicial system, back to court, and take them back to court and say, see, these California prisoners do need isolation. They do need segregation. They do need lockdown, because when we let them out, they act like animals. Again, what do you expect when you have traditional prison gangs that follow politics, that have been running in these prisons for years and decades, and you're not putting them in isolation, you're putting them together. You're putting them all on the same yard. And I'm talking about non-active gang members, active gang members, non-active prisoners that are not functioning anymore, SNY, GP, general population. When I say SNY, that's sensitive needs yards, which is another word for PC. And you're placing all these guys in these non-designated yards, these programming yards, and expect these guys just to get along and program. Well, obviously, that's not the case. And the system knows that's not the case. And this is what's happening. A surge in violence, and it's getting crazy. Okay, so New Folsom has been off the hook lately. There was a riot between the GBG, which are the gay boy gangsters, a dropout gang, or I wouldn't even consider them a dropout gang, a gang that was started on the SNY yards. For whatever reason, they started protection or whatever against, being assaulted by general population inmates or other SNY inmates. And they got into it with another group, and it's just going haywire. It's going crazy. You have the active side of New Folsom killing everything, and then you have the non-active side, which is the SNY yards, killing everything. So New Folsom is basically off the hook right now. You have the EOP yards. Nobody wants to go there. It's crazy. You got Cody Taylor running around the EOP yard acting like a J-Cat. Now, because High Desert has been, I want to say High Desert because I'm so used to High Desert being the most vicious. When I was doing time, High Desert and Pelican Bay were the standard. Okay, they were the standard of prisons, the most violent prisons. Of course, Tehachapi and Centinela and prisons like that have always had a notorious reputation. But those were the ones when I was doing time, it was like, fuck High Desert, hell no, right? And no Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay more so because it was in the middle of nowhere on the Oregon-California border. And it was just desolation and hopelessness, and I didn't want to go there. I was willing to do what I had to do when I was active and doing my thing, but wasn't no one trying to go out there. Well, there's a new prison that has taken the title. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And this prison is probably the most notorious prison right now, the most violent prison, and it's located in Soledad, California. in the Salinas Valley, and it is Salinas Valley State Prison. With all these lockdown situations and modified programs, and that's just another phrase or another word for lockdown. You hear Salinas Valley a lot. Salinas Valley is probably one of the most functioning active yards with the business in the state of California. It seems like they're making this the new high desert. They're sending everyone in the middle of the heat. And believe me, these guys are getting off, whether it be Norteños, Southsiders, whites, brothers. It doesn't matter. If you're doing time at Salinas Valley, you got a notch on your belt because it's a dangerous situation. And it's so dangerous that there was a murder that just happened the other day where 3 Norteños were involved, and two of them are alleged to have booked a guy in the day room, of course. But it was such a violent act, more violent than has happened in a long time. I've seen a lot of violent things happen during my time in the California system, things I couldn't even explain or tell you, and things I could. And I'll tell you this right here, the story on it is crazy. So for whatever reason, if you find yourself functioning in the California system with a group or a gang, that doesn't mean you're safe. That doesn't mean you're going to be preserved or you're going to be looked out or looked at a different type of way. That means if you fuck up one time, you've now aligned yourself with a very violent group. That means if you're not doing everything you're supposed to do and you're not following the rules, or you have some smut on your name or a bad a case on your jacket or something in the past where you fucked up, don't think it won't catch up to you. Because the one thing I know about groups while I was functioning is there's a constant, they're constantly looking into people. If you get on the radar, if you don't bust a move when you're supposed to bust a move, if you get in debt, if you're involving yourself in business that's not your business, if you're just acting like a J-Cat, if you're horse playing too much, if you're not, your hygiene's not up to par, if you're not working out aggressively like you should, if you're indulging in drugs and not paying your debts, if a lot of different things can get you put in the pot and stirred up, right? But these 3 Norteños, for whatever reason, a couple of them decided to, or were told it was time for one of them to go. Now, I don't know the mistakes he made, but I'm sure whatever he did, they wanted to make a very violent example. Now, I've seen removals on yards. I've participated in them. I've been around them. I know the inside and the outsides of what goes into making them happen. And a lot of it is just violent people wanting to act out on violence. It's crazy. I've been there where we're plotting like, man, we're going to break this motherfucker's arms, his legs, his this, his that, like just overboard craziness when he was just a homeboy busting a spray with us a week ago. But all of a sudden, everyone's quick to raise their hand and jump like, I got it. Because everyone thinks it's going to make them look more crazy or like they're participating more than the next man who's just out there doing burpees, right? It is what it is. Certain people with a lot of time are willing to defend the casa. They're willing to defend the house, and are willing to get rid of trash off the yard because they feel it's in defense of their people, and you're only as strong as your weakest link. Right now, let me explain this to you. When someone goes all bad, when someone is considered no good anymore, it's like everyone in his group turns the back on him. Everybody knows what time it is, and no one will stick up for him. He's got to go. This could be your cellie. This could be a homeboy that you were tight with on the yard, working out with every day. This could be your boy from the streets, from your vadu, from your neighborhood you grew up with, from diapers. This could be your family member, your cousin, your brother. It doesn't matter. If they associate or they put themselves in a position of, kicking it with the homies or whatever you consider your group, whether it be white, black, brown, it doesn't matter, and they fuck up, it's you. If you defend them, it's you're involved. It's you or them. I've never seen anyone defend someone to the point where it's like, hey, bro, I'm willing to take the bullet for you. No, hell no. It's like, hey, man, I can't do nothing to you. Can't put the Mac on you, dude. The only thing I could do, homie, I'm going to turn my back on you and walk away. Now, of course, this last thing that I heard, this last removal, and that's pretty much what it is, man. This guy had to go for whatever fucking reason. He messed up. See you later. These 2 individuals went all out. They laid a demo down. Now, that leads me to believe that this guy not only was supposed to be removed, but he was not supposed to walk off that yard because they hit him so many times. And there was a knife when they took him to the medical services. There was a knife found in his skull, in his eye socket, pounded all the way in. Now that's some aggression right there. That's some violence. Okay. I've never seen anything like that. I've seen dudes hammer fists, knives into people. I've seen, I've spoken on a lot of things that I can't speak on, or I'm not going to speak on. I'm not going to speak on those things. I've seen a lot of things I can't speak on. That's the better phrase. But I will say this, for whatever reason, that's prison business. That's Salinas Valley business. That's part of joining a group or a gang. That's part of, hey, you're on that yard. You better do what you got to do, right? Straight up. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So to me, these type of things that are happening, and it's back to back to back to back at Salinas Valley, murder after murder, stabbing after stabbing. I don't know if it's just people handling their business or that's just the violent reputation that they have right now. So they're trying to uphold that. But it seems to go from prison to prison. Right now, Salinas Valley's time. When you hear people talk about, hey, homie, I just paroled out of Salinas Valley, they're letting you know, like, I was in Thunderdome, homie. I was where it really, really counts, where it's really cracking right now. Back in the days, same thing with High Desert. Hey, I just got out of High Desert. Everyone was like, ooh, right? Because they knew or they have heard stories about High Desert. I remember having a family member in High Desert. And at that time, the Norteños were going at it with the Kumis, which are the blacks from the Bay Area, right? And this goes to dispel the myth and the rumor that blacks and Northerners are always cool and they kick it and they're linked up or clicked up. That's not the case at all, man. I don't know how many times I have to tell people that all these different ethnicities in prison are on their own. They might have a common enemy and go out to the yard and function and get off together for that day, but they're pretty much on their own and doing their own trip, right? So anyways, there was an incident in the library where a black from the Kumis, which is the 415s, the Bay Area, got into it with the Norteño. They got into an adverse conversation. It didn't work out good for both of them. And there was a punch thrown. Okay, it didn't land. But in a place like High Desert at that time, you're not allowed to throw punches. You're not allowed to receive them either. It's all metal. It's all weaponry. And so, of course, the Norteño went back, let people know what time it was. They got off. Blacks got off. It was back and forth for years, for a couple of years, right? It was going down in High Desert. And I remember one of my cellies telling me a story. And he was like, bro, we went out into that yard with the intention of hitting everybody in that yard over 100 times. And I said, where'd you come up with that number, bro? He was like, it just sounded like a good, wholesome number. The way he talked and said it, there was truth behind it. There was a lot of truth behind that. And that was just the mentality. He used to tell me, man, High Desert it was just a place, bro, where it was just death, homie. That's all we wanted to do every day. That's all we seen. That's all we knew. And every group segment was doing it. So why not the homies? I was like, shit, I'm glad I went there, right? But this, to me, right here, seems like what's going on in New Folsom and, of course, Salinas Valley. So if I'm asked straight up, what is the most violent California prison in the state of California? To me, it's going to be whichever one you're at, right? That's going down. A lot of people are like, hey, Salinas Valley, and I'll give it to you. Right now, it is probably the king. It's ruling the kingdom. Salinas Valley is probably the most violent place to be. But there are a lot of other prisons. In fact, there's an SNY prison, very notoriously known, Mule Creek in Ione, California. A lot of people laugh at Mule Creek. A lot of people are like, ain't shit cracking over there. But if you read up on your news, there's been several murders there. There's been visitors hit there. There's been a lot going on lately in Mule Creek. I don't know what's in the water. I don't know what type of inmates got there and decided, hey, we're going to do what we do. Or maybe they're just tired of the bad reputation. But whatever the case is, they're going off over there as well. So right now, I would say Salinas Valley is probably the most violent and vicious in the California system. But to me, I've always been told, the way I was taught was, the most violent place is the place you're at, because you have to defend yourself by any means. So you have to get violent. I've been to prisons where it was all lovely, all good, but I never let myself not be aware or be complacent, because prison is prison. At any time, anyone could get there. And I've seen one guy get to a yard and the whole yard flips. The whole yard changes. The attitude changes. Hey, men have power over prison yards. That's a fact. One guy can get there, or a couple shoe kickouts back in the days, and that motherfucking yard becomes the most dangerous yard for the time being. Anyways, man, it doesn't matter what's the most violent yard. All that matters is how you conduct yourself in prison and stay away from the bullshit. With that being said, for the question that was asked, yes, Salinas Valley right now is considered the most dangerous prison in California. New Folsom's a close second, and Mule Creek's a close third. Bang, bang. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to beat ahead that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive, struggle for what I truly believe in, and that's the betterment of all people. Make sure you tune in. If you haven't tapped into the Collective Clips, my other channel, like and subscribe over there. I got a lot of bangers going on. I got bangers giving bangers piggyback rides today. I got more bangers than a Salinas Valley prison yard. No, I don't.